Welcome back to the Paranormal State, Washington, and UFO UAP. With Makāula Nakae, a lifelong experiencer and ET contactee since 1990. Today's episode: Why Abductees Suspect MKUltra. The Shadow in the Skies and the Safehouse. The overlap between the UFO experiencer community and the history of Project MKUltra is one of the most fascinating intersections of modern folklore, psychological trauma, and deep government secrecy. While true extraterrestrial contact and Cold War mind control experiments are two entirely different realms, many former abductees and experiencers genuinely believe or argue that MKUltra-style programs apply directly to them. Several key factors explain why this theory persists and why the lines between intelligence testing and high strangeness have blurred so heavily. When examining the mechanics of an alleged alien abduction side by side with the documented methods of Project MKUltra and Cold War military intelligence interrogation, the structural and psychological similarities are profoundly unsettling. While the two phenomena originate from entirely different paradigms, the symptoms, physiological states, and procedural frameworks share an eerie functional overlap. Both scenarios are defined by sudden, inexplicable lapses in chronological memory, blank spaces where hours vanish without a trace. In the context of intelligence experimentation, these memory gaps were often deliberately induced using massive doses of experimental psychotropics, like LSD or scopolamine, electroshock therapy, or hypnotic trauma induction designed to create impenetrable amnesia. Similarly, experiencers report waking up with hours missing. To bridge these gaps, both intelligence handlers and early ufologists heavily relied on hypnotic regression, a technique fraught with the danger of confabulation, where the conscious mind attempts to fill blank spaces by constructing elaborate, emotionally protective narratives. A hallmark of the classic abduction account involves waking up utterly paralyzed in one's own bed, unable to speak or move, surrounded by a strange, sterile environment, humming sounds, or blinding, unearthly light. Physiologically and psychologically, this matches the exact effects of severe sleep paralysis, hypnagogic hypnopompic states, trauma-induced dissociation, and the deliberate sensory deprivation protocols studied by researchers like Dr. Sidney Gottlieb and Dr. Ewan Cameron. When the human nervous system is stripped of sensory input or overwhelmed by chemical stress, it generates hypervivid, terrifying hallucinations of external presences, tactile pressure, and visual distortions. The clinical, emotionally detached medical examinations described by abductees, characterized by cold instrumentation, biological sampling, and a relentless focus on reproductive organs and genetic lineage, bear a chilling resemblance to the cold, amoral detachment of mid-century human experimentation. Cold War intelligence files from projects like MKUltra and Artichoke confirm that researchers frequently subjected unwitting subjects to invasive physical and psychological tests, treating human anatomy merely as raw material to be cataloged, manipulated, and violated without regard for consent or personal sovereignty. Within modern ufology, a radical and deeply unsettling subtheory known as MILAB's military abductions emerged to explain a dark possibility: that some individuals who genuinely believed they were being taken by extraterrestrials were actually victims of classified human experimentation, psychological conditioning, or trauma-based mind control programs run by rogue military and intelligence elements. This framework suggests a chilling inversion of the traditional UFO narrative. The aliens were not crossing interstellar space, but rather operating out of domestic black sites, underground bunkers, and military installations. The evolution of the MILAB, military abduction hypothesis, found its most articulate, fearless, and controversial champion in the 1990s, through the work of Dr. Karla Turner, an academic holding a PhD in Old English literature. Turner transitioned into one of the most prominent empirical investigators of the UFO abduction phenomenon after she and members of her own family began experiencing severe, high-strangeness events. Instead of accepting the standard, purely extraterrestrial interpretation of these encounters, Turner dove deep into anomalies that other researchers often glossed over: the persistent, documented presence of human military infrastructure, intelligence operatives, and covert psychological trauma intertwined with classic UFO motifs. During her investigations and case file analyses, Turner documented a distinct subset of experiences whose testimonies did not neatly fit the conventional narrative of benevolent star visitors or even straightforward biological sampling by Grays. Instead, their accounts described a terrifying hybrid reality. Experiencers reported waking up in what appeared to be classic alien craft or holding facilities, only to notice unmistakable signs of human engineering, such as standard medical equipment. Concrete subterranean bunkers, armed guards in unmarked or black military uniforms, and the smell of ozone and diesel fuel. Witnesses frequently reported being tracked by black helicopters immediately before or after experiencing missing time, encountering government agents who warned them to remain silent, or finding themselves abruptly moved to secure, windowless institutional facilities. Rather than undergoing passive observation, these individuals described intense, aggressive questioning and psychological conditioning sessions conducted by human handlers who spoke clinical English, used military jargon, and exhibited absolute command over the environment. From these disturbing anomalies, Turner formulated a provocative and deeply unsettling theory. Black-budget military and intelligence operatives were actively weaponizing the cultural saturation of flying saucers and aliens as a built-in, highly effective psychological smokescreen. Turner posited that the intelligence apparatus, inheriting the dark legacy of projects like MKUltra, Artichoke, and advanced human factors testing, realized that the emerging cultural mythology of UFOs offered the ultimate operational cover. If a clandestine agency needed to test experimental trauma-based conditioning, advanced pharmaceuticals, hypnotic memory wiping techniques, or sensory deprivation protocols on human subjects, they faced a massive security hurdle: how to keep the victims quiet if they remembered the ordeal. By orchestrating encounters to mimic classic abduction motifs, or by allowing the subject's environment to bleed into an alien framework, the human brain would naturally default to a supernatural explanation. When a victim woke up with missing time, psychological trauma, and false memories of medical probing, they would blame little green men or Zeta Reticuli, rather than pointing an accusing finger at a domestic black site or a rogue defense contractor. Dr. Karla Turner's work pushed the ufology and intelligence research communities into uncomfortable territory, suggesting that some of the most profound terrors reported by experiences were not crossing the stars from distant galaxies, but were instead being engineered right here on Earth using the vast, terrifying machinery of state-sponsored mind control and a convenient cosmic myth. Under this intelligence framework, the cultural familiarity of UFOs provided a perfect operational shield. If a human subject, whether a service member, a security clearance holder, or an unwitting civilian, was subjected to extreme covert drug trials, high-stress interrogation training, or invasive hypnotic conditioning, any resulting psychological breakdown would produce surreal, terrifying hallucinations. If the subject hallucinated non-human entities, surgical probes, or advanced disc-shaped craft, intelligence handlers did not need to scramble to protect a classified human program. Instead, the subject's own brain, fueled by societal mythology, would naturally interpret the trauma as an alien abduction, effortlessly explaining away missing time and psychological trauma by blaming little green men rather than government torturers. A primary, relentless operational goal of Cold War behavioral programs, like Project MKUltra and Project Artichoke, was to engineer foolproof, scientific methods to shatter a human personality, induce deep psychological dissociation, and construct impenetrable amnesia. Intelligence handlers wanted to know how far a human mind could be pushed before its core operating system collapsed, and how to successfully bury those terrifying memories beneath layers of confusion. When a human consciousness is subjected to extreme pharmaceutical trauma, simulated terror, sleep deprivation, or severe sensory manipulation, it does not gracefully absorb the shock. It naturally fractures to protect itself. Clinical psychologists and trauma researchers frequently note that the bizarre, dreamlike, and intensely alien narratives reported by experiences are often the human brain's desperate, adaptive mechanism for translating profound psychological shock, neurochemical distress, or sleep state anomalies such as severe hypnagogic or hypnopompic hallucinations and sleep paralysis into a coherent, manageable narrative framework. When the brain experiences a trauma so foreign it defies normal waking vocabulary, It wraps that terror in symbolic imagery, transforming medical instruments into probes, human handlers into gray entities, and black-budget laboratories into strange spacecraft. Because the US government did run illegal, highly secretive programs explicitly designed to induce these exact neurological states of dissociation, terror, and amnesia, it permanently poisoned the well of public trust. It created a historical breeding ground where deep-seated institutional paranoia was not just a baseless conspiracy theory, but a rational response to documented government malfeasance. When people experienced the terrifying, uncanny mechanics of memory loss and psychological fracturing, they had every historical reason to suspect that shadowy state actors, rather than just the cosmos, were pulling the strings. Perhaps the most powerful and enduring driver behind the belief that MKUltra-style programs that intersect with the UFO experience is historical reality itself. Once the US government was forced, through the explosive congressional hearings of the mid-1970s, to admit to the existence of Project MKUltra, the psychological contract between the democratic state and the American public was permanently shattered. For decades, any citizen who suggested that federal intelligence agencies were secretly drugging citizens, torturing psychiatric patients in premier hospitals, running black site safehouses, or erasing the memories of unwitting subjects was dismissed as a paranoid conspiracy theorist. When the Church Committee and the Rockefeller Commission laid out unredacted documents proving that the CIA had done precisely those things in the name of national security, the official narrative collapsed overnight. The government admitted it had systematically lied to Congress, broken domestic laws, and treated human lives as disposable variables. Once that institutional veil was torn away, the boundary of what the government might be capable of doing vanished. If the CIA could run clandestine brainwashing and behavioral modification operations in Montreal hospitals, military bases, and midtown Manhattan hotel rooms, it suddenly became entirely plausible to a deeply skeptical public and to traumatized individuals desperate to make sense of inexplicable personal suffering that the state could also be behind high strangeness encounters, missing time, and severe psychological manipulation. When an institution proves it is willing to break every ethical boundary to maintain dominance, citizens are left with a terrifying realization: almost anything becomes possible. While mainstream science and psychology attribute the abduction phenomenon to natural sleep anomalies, cultural mythology, false memory generation, and neurological stress, the shadow of MKUltra provides a tangible, real-world anchor for deep suspicion. It proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that the government was actively trying to hack human consciousness, induce dissociation, and manipulate memory during the exact decades modern ufology was born. For an experiencer trying to make sense of a terrifying, inexplicable trauma, blaming a covert human intelligence program sometimes feels more grounded and infinitely less lonely than facing the vast unknown alone. To be continued. Watch and listen. Watch the cinematic video trailer. Listen to the full podcast now. Explore the archive Cosmic Awakening Volume 1, 1991, Peru, Journey into the Unknown. Sacred Valley of the Incas. Volume 2, Ascension 2012, The Golden Alchemy. Part 3, The First Contact and the Paranormal State. Join the journey. New episodes drop periodically. Each chapter delivers a tight, hyper-focused 10 to 30-minute exploration into the evolution of ufology, perfect for your daily plunge into decoding hidden messages from outer space, designed to raise awareness and foster human evolution. Subscribe to support your inner development. Thumbs up to help push our channel through the algorithm. Comment below. Do you think the psychological trauma reported by ufology witnesses is evidence of otherworldly contact or the lingering shadow of Cold War mind control programs?